Okay. So yeah, so we are going to record this for everyone who could not make it this evening. So thank you, Teresa. They did move it, keeping us on our toes. So in our time together, we're going to spend a little time just honing in on the essence, purpose, focus for pilgrimage. Of course, it's very open because that is, it's going to be different, the deeper why for each person. And then I want to kind of set the context of the Way of the Sun in respect to what is known as the Camino de Santiago, as well as other pilgrimage. So how we got to where we are. And then just give some lowdown in terms of the details of our pending upcoming pilgrimage journeys in 2025, and then talk about some options with that. So again, I've asked Thomas, as well as Maggie, who walked with us this past year, to also chime in. I've got some nice cues that we're going to open up some deeper conversation. And at the end, again, if you are already committed to going, when we close this up, if you're already committed to going, and you'd like to stick around just to speak with some of the other pilgrims, or if you are going to go but haven't committed yet, you can stick around for that time as well. But we won't record that.
I see, but I can't hear anything.
All right. So in respect to, oftentimes pilgrimage can have a very strong religious connotation to some people. Oftentimes when I've told people that I've been going on pilgrimage frequently over the last 3 years, well, 2.5 years since my daughter passed, there is this overwhelming sense or assumption of religious. And while there is often a religious quality, the beauty of pilgrimage is also that it can be completely secular or somewhere in the middle, where it's like the heart of the spirit of the land, the spirit of place, that really is able to speak in to the human experience, the desire to connect with the land, to connect with that which is sacred, and to connect with ourselves, to kind of leave the world behind a little bit and to open up into a softer and a more beautiful way of being. And so before I go any further, I'd love to ask Maggie if you'd be willing to share a little bit about like what called you to pilgrimage. What's the heart of this word when it comes alive for you?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. And hi, guys. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Um, for me, I mean, I was raised Catholic, so I definitely have a religious upbringing. I call myself an active heretic. I definitely engage with Catholic content and theology and imagery and archetypes while mostly practicing as a pagan now. And yeah, and so I think for me, it was this really beautiful reclamation of both my roots as a Catholic and also my roots as an ancient Celt. Like, if my blood was a democracy, I'd be a Celt. And I needed to, I felt like I needed to charge my blood with my ancestors, and I'd never been to Ireland. I knew I wanted to go. I knew I wanted to go in a sacred manner, intentionally. And so when I found out about the walk, I mean, I didn't know you or anybody, but just knowing that it was this beautiful blend of different kind of interfaith approaches to spirituality, and that it was ancient and that it was going to be something on the land at the pace of my ancestors. It just felt like a very clear yes. So I signed up really quickly, and yeah, and the meaning of pilgrimage continues to evolve for me, but it was certainly the right thing to do and life changing. And I'm like so grateful that I've come to Ireland for the first time that way.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think for me, pilgrimage was always a word that just was kind of in the back of my mind. It kind of had this respective relationship with, sort of crusades and going to Israel or Jerusalem, etc. And my father actually invited me to walk the Camino Frances as part of the Camino de Santiago, shortly after my daughter Ayla had passed. And it was just like, yes, that's what I need to do. Just like go and be in the natural rhythm of the earth and in a time signature that has made sense to humans since the beginning of time. Oh, just such a gorgeous, matter of fact, I've been thinking about, uh, my wife and I have been talking about going to Switzerland and Austria to kind of tie into that part of my heritage or our heritage as well. And I quickly realized it's like, I gotta walk across. I got to walk
Yeah.
across Austria and Switzerland, like on the Camino, as a way to like really get in touch with the rhythm and the beauty of the culture, and to reinstate my understanding of the German language. So yeah, thank you, Maggie, and I'll call you back in here in a little bit. I just spoke about the Camino de Santiago. I know we have multiple veterans of the Camino here on the call tonight. So first and foremost, Buen Camino, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. And as we would say in Ireland, Cake Mia Fauci, 100,000 welcomes. You're very welcome here in our conversation this evening. And I hope what you learned this evening will give you an invitation and excitement to walk the sacred lands of Ireland on a pilgrimage route that, according to some of the archives, is 500 years older than the Camino de Santiago. For those of you who do not know the Camino de Santiago, just huge overhead view for a moment. It is a multi-channeled pilgrimage that comes from all over the world, mostly from Europe and from the Middle East, that people walk. Generally, most people begin at the border of France and Spain and walk the about 900 kilometers there. When my father and I walked it, we walked about 450 kilometers. We started in Lyon. But as you can see here, you can start many places all over Europe, including in Ireland and the UK. And it all slowly dovetails until you meet in Santiago, and then most people will finish at Finisterre at the end of the sea. But that's not why we're here tonight. This is just kind of to set the tone. What we're here is to learn a little bit about the Ireland West Camino. And the Ireland West Camino is a name that the people in the west of Ireland in County Mayo, Roscommon, and Sligo have come up with for the time being as a placeholder so that we can have a singular place of discussion. This is simultaneous with the Way of the Sun. The Way of the Sun is a term that was created by Anthony Murphy, and anthropologist, archaeologist from the east of Ireland, who has done a phenomenal job of threading together the ancient sacred pathways that connect Neolithic sites, megalithic sites, Bronze Age sites, Iron Age sites, everything from stone circles and cairns, holy mountains and hills, to the churches, cathedrals, cemeteries, and the shrines that many of us may be familiar with from in Ireland today, for those of you who have spent time there. So in the background here, what we see is the Reek, or Croagh Patrick. Croagh Patrick is the end destination of the Way of the Sun, or the Ireland West Camino. It's on the westernmost coast of Ireland, just outside of Westport, near Clew Bay on the Atlantic Ocean. So I wanted to first bring in a little bit of the essence of inspiration. This can be very brief. Again, I'm going to be doing a talk about this more in depth in April, but going into early November of 2022, I had spent the last 25 years very deep in the Irish mythological cycle, epics, stories, mythos, the lore of the land, the connectivity of the ancient lore and mythology of Ireland with the physical landscape. And so during that time, I've become very familiar with the whole pantheon of different beings who are connected in direct respect and reverence to the land. So the Morrigu and Brija, these are the ancient goddesses of the Tuath Dé Danann, of Anya in Munster, of Macha in Ulster, and then of course the Nua, the silver or golden-armed king of the north, Manannan, king of the sea. We've got Lu, lord of the bright flaming spear, and the Dagda, the great god. And at the heart of it all is Aru, or Arran, where the island of Ireland gets her name. But so to pause there, loss of child, and invitation to walk Camino dovetailed together, gave a beautiful opportunity to, as Maggie was just speaking into, dive deeper into the heart of my own Catholic roots. And one of my mentors, as well as a friend who's a Jesuit that teaches at my alma mater, St. Xavier in Cincinnati, invited me before going to walk the Camino with my father. What saints will you invite to walk with you? And I'm thinking like, oh, I don't know. Like, okay, I know St. Bridget and I know St. Francis of Assisi, and there's a couple other ones that I knew, but as we went, I got to learn more and more about these really obscure, at least to me at the time, obscure saints that hail from Ireland. And so following a similar pattern in terms of the connection in the physical landscape, but in the order of my own learning of them, St. Bridget, St. Brendan the Navigator, Columcille or St. Columbus, St. Ita, who again, today is her feast day, St. Attracta, which I completely inspired this walk that we're doing and this whole pilgrimage route. St. Enda, who is very similar to St. Ignatius Loyola, is very much about the development of the mind and the importance of education. St. Kevin of the Wicklows in Glendalough, and St. Brunnock, who took care of the destitute, the sick, the poor, and of pilgrims. And then, of course, at the heart of it all, for anyone who has ever walked a Camino de Santiago, of course, you're walking on the way of roses. You are walking on the way of the Great Mother. You are walking on the path of Mary, not only the path of St. James the Greater, and so this journey also very much inspired by the Irish reverence for the Mother, the Great Mother of Christ, the Great Mother of Ireland, the Queen of Ireland. So that was just a little step back. So let's re-enter back in here. Entering back into the heart of this focus of the way of the sun and what is opening for us in the future. So first and foremost, let's talk about the name itself. So the Ireland, the Camino in Ireland, of course, Camino is a Spanish word. The Irish word that's closest to it ish is the Tohar. So you'll see that in the last of the four names down there. Tohar actually means bog road, but much of this road at one time would have spanned through bogs, and there would have been great oak timbers that were utilized to help elevate so that people would stay dry as they came in. But these are some of the other names. So the Way of the Sun I already spoke to, that was Anthony Murphy coining that or transliterating that from Irish. Slieghe Assail, that's the ancient Irish name for this route, for this way that stretched from the mouth of the Boyne River through the Hill of Tara all the way out to Rathcroghan. There were 5 ancient sacred roads, and Slieghe Assail was one of those sacred roads that all eventually converge at the Hill of Tara. Then, of course, when St. Patrick walked this route in the 5th century AD, this also became known as the Way of St. Patrick. I already spoke to the Tohar. Tohar Patrick means the Way of Patrick, or literally the bogway of Patrick. So I'm sure some of you could attest to how dry things were in Ireland. We'll get more into that later. So this is an overview of the path that is being restored. And when I say being restored, caveat that's really important here is that a little over almost 400 years ago, major political and economic changes in Ireland and Scotland. Those major changes essentially undermined the Catholic Celtic gentry in Ireland, who of course were the patrons of the monasteries, of the abbeys, of the convents, of the churches, of the hostels that would support the any pilgrims who are walking the way. In the upper right, you'll see one of the ruins that's in Downpatrick up in the north of Ireland. And so many of the sites that we pass that are older than a few hundred years look like this. And so, of course, when you lose wealthy patronage, buildings begin to fall apart, roofs eventually fail, and no longer do the elite join the abbeys and the monasteries. And so you end up with a scenario where buildings become dilapidated, and therefore there isn't the support to allow pilgrims to begin to walk. Fast forward to the end of the 20th century and 21st century, various aspects of modern culture have allowed for the resurgence of being able to provide the support necessary to be able to do this pilgrimage once again. So restoration, the pathways are still there. What we're doing is rethreading it back together and getting it back out to the world. The organizations that I'm working with in Ireland right now, besides working with waymarking this pilgrimage route, are also working with the communications, with education in their community, and helping to provide the support for any of the pilgrims who are starting to walk on this route. So overall, what we're looking at, if you start in Downpatrick, which is all the way up in the north of Ireland, is that if you walk all the way to Croagh Patrick, it's 523 kilometers. And so within context to that, we have 3 major legs. And so you see those broken up in terms of numerically on the map in front of us. So I'm just going to take those apart a little bit here. So in 2024, this 168 kilometer, and you'll also see down at the bottom 187 kilometers. I'll get to that in a moment. But 168 kilometer section was restored, put back together. Myself and 2 friends, Marek Sawicki and Hannah Lay, walked that segment in February of 2024 in preparation for the rest of us walking through again in July. And part of, I say, like practicing was it's ground truthing. A lot of the original route was restored utilizing GIS software, as well as ordnance survey maps, which are sort of the equivalent of our USGS maps. And so
there it is. That's what I wanted.
And that which is known within context of the archived sites that were along this traditional pilgrimage route, we were able to put that back together. And so then in July of 2024, 20 of us walked from Rathcroghan to Croagh Patrick, as well as my brother Thomas, who is on here as well, who was invited to come along and help create a documentary, which we'll share a little bit more about later. So that was February and July of 2024. Now, before I flip the slide, 2 things to know about. There are 2 really strong holidays that correspond with the ascension of Croagh Patrick. There is Lunasa, which is the ancient cross-quarter Celtic holiday, which falls at the end of July, early August, also known as Garland Sunday, also known as Reek Sunday. So, so the last Sunday of July in Ireland now is typically known as Reek Sunday, but it corresponds with the feast of Lunasa. Croagh Patrick once was the ancient home of the Tuath Dé Danann deity Lugh Longarm, and so Patrick, was renamed in more modern times. So just a little sharing on that. The other time that this line is most alive is, again, with it also being referred to as the way of the sun, is at the equinoxes. We're essentially drawing an east-west belt across Ireland and walking parallel and adjacent to Ireland's 2 most sacred rivers, the Boyne River in the east and the Shannon River in the west. And so at the equinoxes, all of the sites that we pass just light up and come alive. So this is what I'm going to be doing in March, partly with my father, partly with a friend or 2 as well. We're going to be ground truthing from Downpatrick to Rathcroghan, because at this point it's conceptual, utilizing multiple existing trackways threaded together in order to create this gorgeous extension to the Ireland West Camino, or the way of the sun. So coming from Downpatrick, we'll be heading down to Drogheda, which is here at the mouth of the Boyne River, if you can see my cursor, right on the Irish Sea there, and then basically heading due west to Rathcroghan. And so we'll be completing 358 kilometers on this route, or 215 miles. Oh, I forgot. On the previous slide, I had said 168 kilometers. I was going to talk about 187. The extra kilometers on that are because of all the little zigzags we did going off to visit off path holy wells, stone circles, cairns, cashels, grianons, a lot of the beautiful sites along the way, especially the holy wells. A lot of people did a lot of extra trekking to get to holy wells that were fairly close, but still added some additional time onto and distance. So what are we doing in September? We're going to be walking the entire band from the Irish Sea to the Atlantic, or to Clew Bay. And so that's the last two legs of the journey. So going from Drogheda to Rathcroghan to Croagh Patrick. So about 365 kilometers. I thought that was interesting. There's a kilometer per day. The other thing that's really interesting is that there is, on average, one major sacred site per kilometer along this whole trackway as well. So really a beautiful, beautiful way to connect with Ireland. Also, we are offering some space for people who are interested in joining with us and walking in September to meet us a little over halfway in. So meeting us where we started last year, and walking from Rathcroghan to Croagh Patrick as well. So I'll share a little bit more about that later, but that's just to kind of give you a cue up of what we're doing for those that would be joining us for the end there. They'll be doing that around the 168 to 187 kilometers, depending on extras added in. Let me just pause for a moment here and reorient. So looking back at this map, what I'm going to do is just show a couple of the major, these are like major, UNESCO world-class heritage sites that this particular pilgrimage site passes. I'm going to do this very quickly. Newgrange and Knowth. Those are these cairn structures that you see on the left and the right. The Hill of Slane, beautiful, beautiful complex. The River Boyne, of course, also passes Newgrange, Knowth, and Downpatrick, which are just phenomenal ancient Bronze Age sites. The Boyne River, of course, is its own beautiful, beautiful site. We pass through Kells. We cross over the Hill of Slieghe Assail, or Loughcrew, which has one of the largest concentrations of Neolithic temple sites / burial cairns in Ireland. We also go through Mullameen Forest, which is the largest beech forest in Ireland. Get to walk through there for several hours. Very excited about that. And before we get to Rathcroghan, we pass many, many major hill ceremonial sites and old moats, like this moat here at Granard, right at the King's Road. This is where, if you'll remember again, Slieghe Assail was one of the original names. That was one of the King's Roads that connected Tara to Rathcroghan. So it passes all of these sites that would have been such importance in antiquity. The River Shannon, the river of the wise woman, the wise river, the beautiful river, the largest and most holy river in Ireland. And then, of course, ending at Rathcroghan. Now, Rathcroghan, for those of you who don't know, is the ancient secular as well as sacred seat of Connacht, the west of Ireland. So this is the heart of the West. And again, why on leg 2 of this particular trip, this is where the second wave of folks will join us to jump in. So with leg 2, just as a reminder. And so with leg 2, we walk through Cíl Aireacht, or the parish of Saint Attracta or Nave Attracta. We walk through the twin lakes, or Lough Gara. That's what Gara means in Irish, is neighbors. They're the two neighboring lakes. We pass several grianons or cashels, the ancient stone ritual solariums, if you will. We pass hundreds and hundreds of the fairy farts, or the Ratha. And some of those are just absolutely gorgeous, covered with massive ancient beech trees and oak trees, or ash. Just absolutely gorgeous. We pass through Knock Shrine, which is an international pilgrim's destination as it is already anyway, because of an apparition of the Mother Mary, as well as who was it? I can't remember who else she was with offhand. Sorry, I'll have to check my memory on that one later. But there was I think like 18 to 24 people saw this apparition for several hours. I think it was in 1879. Don't quote me on that one. But a beautiful international pilgrims destination. People from all over the world come just for that shrine. So we walk through there. We walk through the community of Ball. And Ball, there's beautiful holy wells, round towers. And then we get out into the forests and meadows. We pass the Aigle rivers and caves, where in this situation, you can see this cave actually goes into the river, or I'm sorry, into the caves from this aerial shot. We passed through the ancient monastic site of Ahower, of Ballintubber Abbey, the Bohey Stone, which goes all the way back into the early Neolithic, late megalithic. From this stone where you see these beautiful petroglyphs, you can actually watch at the equinoxes. You can watch the equinoxes. You can watch the sun creep down and roll down the side of Croagh Patrick, similar to how you can watch it in Chichen Itza in the Yucatan. And then, of course, finally, there's the ascent of Croagh Patrick at the end. So just a very brief blast of some of the things that we can expect. But again, I spoke to this a little bit earlier. There's over 500 sacred sites along this way. So with 523 kilometers, we're averaging about one site per kilometer. Oftentimes, it's more like they're in clusters, as things typically are in that site. You might find contemporary churches next to megalithic sites, such as a standing stone or a cairn. And then you might find a Iron Age ferry forts of the Rath adjacent to a more contemporary holy well, or you might find a 700-year-old holy well next to a cathedral. I mean, there's just such a mix. So for whatever level of interest you have in whether it's archaeology, religion, spirituality, or just seeing beautiful things and feeling the land move through, I cannot speak more highly to that. And actually, Thomas, I wouldn't mind inviting you to speak into this a little bit as well. So Thomas Brighter, who's on the call with us this evening, was basically funds were gathered in order to create a documentary around this inaugural walk that we did in 2024. And so he was there initially just being professional and, very much disappearing into the fab work, fly on the wall, recording things. But the further we got in, the more he was just a part of the family, a part of our pilgrims pod moving across the landscape together. And so in respect to all of these fascinating sacred sites and archaeological sites that we saw along the way, Thomas, what really stood out to you?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, I had a pretty unique perspective to a lot of these sites because I had my drone up all the time. So, I'm way up in the air and I'm getting a whole other view of these areas. Actually, the river and the cave system that you just showed on there, I remember getting my drone out there and I hiked down to that area, and I was ahead of the pilgrims because I didn't want to bother them with my camera and my drone flying through the air. And I get down there and I had to hike a little way and wrestle some dairy cows going through some fields. But I got there and I just sat down for a moment because it was just a location that commanded me to just not do anything for a second, just sit there and just listen and breathe and just take it in. Because I've been, driving around a large diesel camper van, for days at that point, just filming and being in it. And that was the first time I was really pulled to just sit still and be in a place. And then you later told me that that's your daughter has the same name as as that river. So I was like, okay, so there's some power here. But that was a location that really stood out to me too, because it wasn't it wasn't built, it wasn't made by man's hands. It was just there, and it's been there for so long. And I felt a really deep connection to that place for sure.
Yeah, and I imagine that since you were sort of like pulsing, oscillating around us as we were all, continuing our walk, you were getting to see things from remotely, from above. You're getting to see things from the van as you were driving, and you also spent a lot of time interviewing people along the way. What stood out to you about some of those communications with the people of Ireland?
Some of my favorite interactions were ones that just happened. They weren't planned interviews or anything. They weren't setting up my lights and cameras and all that. It was, for example, actually, when I was at at those caves, the farmer whose family owns that property, it was their son. He's about my age, and he came up and was talking to us. Actually, your parents were there with me, and we just got to chatting with him, and and he told me the history of the land and his family, and I asked him questions about how he feels about pilgrims going through his land and his property all the time. And he's like, yeah, it is what it is. It's the land is for everybody. And he was just very laid back and very chill about the whole thing. And then he later caught up to me down the road and gifted me a walking staff made out of black thorn that he made with a antler from a deer that he said was deceased on his property. I'm assuming he killed it. And gave it to me, and it had the Irish
Oh, yeah.
yeah, stitched into it for the name of the property itself. And I gave that to you. And so it was just, yeah, interactions like that with local people that just wanted to know you. They genuinely wanted to ask you questions and know you and check on you and see what you needed. And then I also heard some incredible stories from some of the pilgrims where they would be walking and someone would come out of their home and offer them water or something to eat, and then would ask them to take prayers with them
Yes.
to Croagh Patrick. And I was like, that's just where I live, you wouldn't see that. Like, people don't just come out of their homes and start conversations with you like that, especially on a deep, profound level and a spiritual level too. So, and I mean, and then just getting to know some of the people in the communities that I did interview and how proud they are of their heritage and their specific location, and their towns, and the history of those towns. And I learned so much, so much information of things that I never would have if I didn't go and meet these people and check out their towns and what they're trying to build up, and their excitement for a pathway like this to be going through their village, because it means a lot of the people I spoke to were the aging community, and they were excited to have something like this starting because they knew that it would be a future for their families, that it would be something that their families can look forward to and be a part of, also for more pilgrims to come through the area, and having potentially more of an infrastructure to support more people coming through. And it was just, everybody I spoke to was just so excited and so open to the idea of this pathway and it being restored. And I didn't meet a single mean person in Ireland the whole time I was there. Not a single one.
Well, thank you, Thomas. And I think that the thing that it's like people from the pilgrimage being invited into people's homes for tea, sitting on people's front porches and listening to their children tell stories or play in the lawn, like people coming out and just shaking your hand, asking us to carry prayers with us to the mountain, the musicians that came out and joined us, sometimes walking with us, sometimes gathering with us in the evenings. I mean, gosh.
Sister Maureen showed up one time and found me in my van while I was filming and gave me a whole Tupperware container of scones that she made and asked me to go and find all the pilgrims and pass them out to them. So I did. I drove around for an hour just looking for you guys,
Love
passing
it.
scones out the window because I had a nun told me to.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. Let's go ahead and continue on here. So, lowdown. I want to just talk about, so I know some of you are here because you're thinking about walking with us this late summer in September. I know some of you are here just because you're interested in what's happening. So hopefully this has helped open that up a little bit. And I know some of you are here are interested because you want to do the walk yourself, perhaps at some point in time. So I hope whatever unfolds for you, that you meet it in a good way. But essentially, I wanted to just give some basic background information on a few things. And I did see that some of our other pilgrims from this past July did join us. So I might this evening, so I might ask a couple of them to speak off the cuff. Hopefully you don't mind being called upon. But terrain, one of the things that's most important, is very similar in terms of walking one of the caminos in Spain or Portugal. A lot of it's tarmac. Tarmac is also another word for cement. So a lot of the roads are like what you see here. They're single lane roads. It's like loose chippings or small gravel. Most of the time, the middle of the road has what we love to call the mossy middle. You'll notice that people in the background are walking on that mossy middle. So that's a really, really beautiful opportunity to have that soft place to walk, but it's really easy walking. But for those that are used to like the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, there are some trails like that, but that's about 25 to 30% of the remaining trails. So fields going through people's pastures, boglands with bridges, streams with bridges, gravel pathways, and then also your classic forested pathways as well. So the other thing that I think is important to talk about is topography and elevation. The Camino in Spain has a lot of high elevation, especially at the border of Spain and France. And then as you're going through the Montañas de Leones, the mountains that border Galicia and the Canton of Leon. So with this particular walk, the majority of it is rolling to flat. And by rolling to flat, I mean like elevation. Of course, if you start at Drogheda and start at the sea, we're starting at 0 feet elevation, working our way up to a little over 2,500 feet of elevation at Croagh Patrick. But that's the last day. Most of the elevation throughout ranges in maybe a few hundred feet of elevation through the day. So it's very casual, rolling type of walk. Very easy for most people of any fitness type to engage. So again, ending at the top of Croagh Patrick at a little over 2,500 feet in elevation. I'm not going to leave these up for very long, but what I wanted to do is just show here are the various stages in the leg that goes from Drogheda to Rathcroghan or to Tulsk. Most of those legs are very, very easy, and some of them are moderate, and mostly they're moderate just because of distance or because of some minor hill climbs. In the latter section, walking from Rathcroghan all the way out to Croagh Patrick, again, very easy to moderate walking, with the last day being somewhat difficult. I mean, it's all in perspective, but I will say, and I think anyone would say, actually, Bob Kelly, I think you're on here. You want to tell people about the road, brother? To take yourself off mute if you don't mind.
I'm working on tech.
You're good.
All right. I think I'm still on the road, man. What would you like to know?
Well, maybe just share with people like what your feel was. Did you turn 71 yet, Bob? Or are you still 70? We still got a little bit of time?
I turned 70 just after the pilgrimage there.
Okay, yeah. So, just because I know we've got some walkers going with us, or walkers who are interested in this particular pilgrimage. I've shared a little bit about the roads, the walking, the pastures, just maybe share a little bit of your experience with how it felt to meet the road, to meet the pathway, um, and
Well,
possibly touch into that final ascent up to the top of Croagh Patrick.
oh, the end. Oh my God. I'm just recovering. No, I kind of took the pilgrimage as a way to to feel Ireland, if you will.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be pretty interesting journey because I wanted some time to think about what I'm going to do with the rest of my life and had nothing to do with the pilgrimage. But it was quite the healing experience, if you will.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's hard to say, I guess, it's taken me these several weeks just to find some integration with what went on with me and
Hmm.
with the pilgrimage and walking all uh that way. So
Yeah.
it
Well,
was quite the experience.
beautiful. Thank you, Bob. Maggie, do you want to add anything in here?
Yeah, I'll say I just want to commend Bob for his abilities. He really didn't give up, and I felt like, in terms of the actual difficulty in walking, I mean, I'm 31, so I've got less than half of the years that Bob's put down on Earth. But I definitely struggled the first couple days, and what I loved about this walk is that I got to like day three, and I had been, Angel had given me a new pair of shoes, which helped a lot, and I'd been focusing on my core because my lower back was hurting, holding my big backpack, and by day three and four, I was just like, I felt so strong and so capable that by the last day, which was supposed to be the most difficult, when we ascended the Reek, and I got my period unexpectedly, and I didn't have anything to help me in terms of like painkillers or whatever. And I tend to get really, I'm sensitive, so my body, when I'm going through that, I like to rest. But I think it was just the emotional euphoria mixed with the 7 previous days of walking, that even though normally I would just like lay around and do nothing, I was so ready for it. And I like walked up the mountain barefoot, bleeding, and just like, very, very in it and very happy. And I felt really sad that we weren't just gonna like all get on a plane and keep walking, like go to do the Camino. And I just like, and I don't know if I've even told you this, Jeremy, but I'm gonna do an 800-mile walk in the spring to like just keep, because I'm just addicted now. I'm like, the Pilgrim's Path is the path for me, yo ho, and so I feel like all of it just kind of works itself out in a really magical way. And obviously training is important, but I just feel like there's like an emotional and euphoric and spiritual wave that can be ridden all the way to the top of the mountain, and that's my own experience with it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Maggie, I just wanted to touch on something about that too, because I recorded you getting to the top of the Reek, and I look at it every day as I'm editing the documentary. But
Oh yeah.
you had the most emotional response getting to the top more than anybody else. I would actually, Nick is on here too. I would say Nick had a pretty internal emotional response that I got to witness too. But Maggie, you got to the top and you had the biggest smile on your face, and Jeremy gave you the biggest wraparound dad hug. And within 2 minutes of that hug, you were in tears and
Mm.
sobbing, and you were letting everything out. And I almost wanted to stop recording because I felt like I was intruding on your moment. And but then it was just so, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. It was so incredible to just see the pilgrims that were at the top already just surround you.
Mm.
That you weren't alone the whole path, and you weren't alone at the top of the mountain either. And
Yeah, thank
that
you
was
for
like
that.
the definition of what the pilgrimage was about, I feel. It wasn't just about the walk. It wasn't just about the individual experience. It was what the group did together and supported each other through it all. It was incredible.
Yeah, thank you. And if I may just riff on that a little bit more, I'm so honored by your witnessing of me and holding that, Thomas. I love you. But also just like there was this really beautiful natural rhythm of alone time and community time. And it was like we were like this one organism, like a beehive or something, and we somehow knew when to like take space and I'd actually walked the whole last day solo. Like I didn't want to walk with anyone. I was like in my prayer. And then yeah, the contrast between that solo time and the contemplation that afforded me with then coming to the top of the mountain and being surrounded by everyone. I felt like that was just such a beautiful metaphor for a rhythm that existed naturally the whole time. And I loved this walk so much, and I recommend this walk so much to people because you really had, I felt I really had the opportunity whenever I wanted to be alone with my prayer. And then whenever I wanted one friend or a couple friends or everybody, that was also afforded to me. And so there was this really musical magic to it in that way. And yeah, and I really appreciated the both, you know, to be able to be with the group and then to be able to just totally be me and God. So yeah, it was really special. Thank you for that. I love you.
I think one of the things that's really important to note here is most people didn't know each other before doing this pilgrimage. And just as I opened with that quote from the Sufi prefect in the second slide, by the time this group of 21 people had made it 187 kilometers, there was such a strong sense of community and family. And like Maggie said, there's plenty of space to go and be on your own and dovetail back together with people. For those of you who have walked one of the caminos in Spain or Portugal, you probably formed a pod as you walked or oscillated in and out of several pods. Just such a beautiful part. The fellowship is such an important part of the journey. The other thing that I really want to speak to, you know, is in terms of like why people walk again, the sense of like carrying prayers and carrying intentions. I feel like this is an important piece of it. However you navigate your chosen vocabulary with that is really up to you. But I think the thing that's most important to recognize is just how inclusive not only the groups are that we curate to put together for this walk, but also how open Ireland was to us as walkers through. And Nick, I did see that you were in here, so I'd love to see if you would just share a little bit about your experience with that sense of inclusivity. Don't forget to keep your song. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, community and inclusivity. Really, I'm just been having a week over here in winter, and I've just seeing some of these photos and seeing the faces of all these people on this call, and what a tremendous like mood boost. I'm just getting like these waves of nostalgia and gratitude, just feeling so blessed to have been able to walk on this trip. And like you said, so many unfamiliar faces when we started. I've been adventuring with you for a few years now, and just like these new people that come in and we're like instantly family was really priceless. And I'm grateful to be on this call right now, just to be surrounded by these familiar faces again. I feel like I'm almost transported back there to this mythical time where we were all together walking in Ireland. I'm kind of speechless and feeling rather emotional. And I feel like I'm sort of just like grinning, which is a healthy change of pace for the week I've been having. Just sort of reliving some of these memories. And
you know, Nick, the first time I stood on the raw earth with you in Ireland was at Slieghe Assail at Loughcrew, which is right where this pathway goes through. Do you mind if I share that experience a little bit?
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
so Nick he was touching the earth, and it was really his first time in this part of his ancestral home. He of course, had spent a few days in Dublin, staying up all night, dancing with Brazilians and all that sort of thing. But here he was on the top of one of the most sacred hills in Ireland. And he just, the opening, the baring of the heart and the soul, and just the pure tears of beauty. And my wife and I just held him and just told him we loved him, and everything was fine, just let it out. But do you remember what you said to me, what it was that opened you up in that way? What cracked the pomegranate shell, if you will?
I'd be curious to hear what you remember. To be totally honest, I remember grief from just like feeling like returning home to a long lost place.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you remember?
Yeah, I would have used slightly different words, but yeah, that's the essence of it. It was like your first time returning home to this place of your heritage and your dreaming, and it just opened something, as it does for many people. So, well, thank you. Thank
Nick,
you.
I would say one thing I noticed with you again, when you got to the top of the Reek was, like I said, Maggie had a pretty emotional experience when she got up there, and you were the first one I saw that got up there. You're the first one at the top of the mountain. You're also the first one to leave that morning. I remember I got a drone shot of you walking down the road from that hotel, and then I panned up with the drone, and you can see Croagh Patrick off in the distance, and it was it'll be in the documentary, but it was perfect. And but I remember hustling to get up to the top because I was like, Nick's gonna be here in no time. And you get up there, and it was like you had kept the same pace the whole way. Like you didn't slow down, nothing stopped you. It was like that's the speed you were going the whole way up. And you get there and you stop right in front of me, and you take a huge deep breath, and then you take another huge deep breath, and you did that like 3 or 4 times, and just like breathe this air that it's like you hadn't taken in centuries, and then you just walked away, and you just raised your arms in the air, and you just opened your hands, and you just took in all the energy that was around you, and then you just separated yourself from everybody, and you just sat down, and you just took it in. And what's interesting, I noticed too, and I see it all the time because again, I'm editing, your feet, you walked up the whole thing barefoot, and your feet were dirty, but they were unharmed.
Mm-hmm.
Your feet looked strong, they looked healthy. It did not look like you had just walked across Ireland and climbed up a rocky mountain. It looked like you just got out of a nice pedicure, but with a mud bath included, And it just showed how much that Ireland, not just its people, but the land, took care of you the whole time you were there. It was visual representation of your experience through your feet. And it was just I remember sitting down and talking with you a little bit, after you had some time alone. And yeah, you talked a lot about the expectation versus reality and what you got out of the experience. And yeah, and then we talked more about it in your interview at Clare Island, and it's just I feel like I received a powerful experience through what all of you experienced, if that makes any sense. I feel like I got all the energy from you guys as you were going through all of this because it was just so profound.
Beautiful. Thank you, Thomas. So one of the big questions that often comes up is, what's the weather like? So it's interesting because after traveling in Ireland for the last 20 years and bringing people over to Ireland for the last 12 years, one of the things that I always thought was, gosh, how does anybody bicycle or walk across Ireland? Because it rains.
Very slowly.
But the thing that I got schooled on was when walking the Camino in Spain with my father and walking the Camino in Portugal was it really rains there. When it rains, it is like getting buckets dumped on you for hours. Anybody that's walked the Camino has probably experienced at least a few days like that, whereas literally everything is soaked. The beauty of Ireland is it's mostly, especially in September or July, it's dry rain. It's gentle precipitation. We did have one day where we got a little bit heavier rain the last 2 or 3 hours of walking, which Thomas just made a lovely little short on, which you can find on the Enchanted Journeys website. It's like a 60-second or 30-second clip of just everybody walking in the rain that day. But I wanted to queue up just a little bit. Let's see where, come on. There we go. Temperatures in the summer usually range from lows of 50s to 78 degrees. If it's really, really sunny and a sweltering day, as they would say in Ireland, it might get up into the low 80s, but generally it does not get above the upper 70s. So 10 to 26 degrees Celsius. At times, especially in high elevations, you may be exposed to some wind. Most of the time when we were walking, it was either sunny to partly cloudy. Some days were more like the gray over days, but you could still see the clouds moving. So you get the texture. But we also had some gorgeous days like this day on the ascent up to the top of the Reek, we could see for miles. Absolutely gorgeous. So again, dry rain, meaning it's a slow precipitation, almost more like what people in the Pacific Northwest along the coast would be used to. That light rain that almost like the wind blows and you can see the droplets move in different directions because they're so small. Ireland at one point was probably most closely related to a temperate cloud forest. In some parts of it where it's still heavily forested, such as in the southwest of Ireland, still have that reminiscence. So just want to give everybody a little bit idea of what it is weather-wise. A lot of people are starting to talk about the north of Europe being a cool refuge as temperatures heat up with the not global warming that's supposedly not happening. But anyways, as things get warmer, people are wanting to go north. And so again, this is just a great opportunity to cool off a little bit from the Camino. Packs, after hiking multiple Caminos as well as multiple times across Ireland, typically I try to guide people to pack in so that they're down somewhere in the 13 to 15 pound range, including with snacks and water. It is easy to do. So for those of you who choose to join us, you'll of course get a really tight packing list and recommended pack size. I mean, 15-pound pack, I can run in that. I know that I really wanted to meet that weight limit when hiking the Camino with my father, just in case there are ever any emergencies and I would have to run ahead or behind and take care of things. We do carry our packs. We do also have a support vehicle that we work in tandem with. Nick is going to be leading that team this year for our whole pilgrimage across Ireland. In 2024, my mother and father, who I believe are on this call as well, were our support team. So Mom and Dad, if you guys are still on, do you want to speak in and share a little bit about your experience being the support team for this pilgrimage? You'll have to take yourself off mute. Maybe they dropped. They were on it for a while.
Are we there?
Yep, you're here.
Okay. Anybody want some grapes? Mary and I loved being the support team for this group. They made us feel so welcome, so loved, always included us in everything. And I know, Nick, you're going to do the same. So, and Nick, Mary and I are giving you a big hug. You too, Bob. But it was just wonderful. And just so many moments. Early in the trip, moment that was closest for me, we met the whole group over at the well of St. Attracta, and we had some hugs and crying with 3 or 4 of us just all together there. And that was wonderful. And so many days, Mary and I thought at first that we were going to have 5 or 6 hours of playtime each day. to go out and look at castles and go visit her cousins and things like that. She has cousins in Tubercury. And we did do that, but another day. But it turned out some days somebody would call us because we tracked where everybody was and where they were going each day. And so we'd get calls, help, we need help, we're lost, cows are attacking us, and things like that. It was wonderful. But we just felt so part of the whole thing. Gina, hi.
I could not have done it without you guys. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
And I brought my knee braces with me just in case I needed them. And I wound up lending out one or two of those to people on the trip. And Mary and I did not go up Croagh Patrick. We went up to the backside where the other 40,000 people were going up, opposite of you all. And we got up to the statue of St. Patrick, up about a half a mile or mile. And we found a nice rock, pulled out our rosaries, and we're saying rosaries there for 2 or 3 hours. And it was wonderful. People were walking past, thanking us for saying the rosary, helping pray them up the hill. And it was just really nice. I'm going to let Mary talk a little bit.
It was wonderful to kind of be that support network. Every day was let's figure out what needs to be done, and every moment sometimes somebody needing something or whatever, just had to be flexible and do whatever we needed to do. And loved every single one of you guys.
One of the things that I think I can speak for everyone on this was having you all there as a support team, being a part of our morning prayers or singing or in the evenings or bringing a song in, really uplifted a lot of people. And I think also just seeing that the bond of family. And I know that, with how close that the group of pilgrims from last year, a lot of people are rewalking this year, and Nick being that support team, that there'll be a really sweet pass off of those traditions. So Nick, you'll have to schedule an appointment with mom and dad to learn all the songs and all the good stuff.
It would be my honor. I'm looking forward to it. I'll reach out.
Nick, when the snow's gone up here, we're going to head down your all's way sometime. So we'll wait till Jeremy and Carrie are around, and we'll get down there maybe May or something. But we want to definitely hook up with you. So
please do. Yeah, looking forward to it.
We kind of did that quite often on the trip. We would run into you, didn't we? About 3 or 4 times. Just you.
Yeah. Each one is auspicious as the last.
Yeah. So one word of advice: just make sure you got lots of grapes, and you got them cut into little bunches. So we would drive along the road as a support vehicle, and these roads were like, half of a car width wide. So, there's weeds coming in either side. And we would just hold grapes out the window as we passed people, and they'd be spread out over a half mile to a mile. And so there might be a 1 person here and 2 person there. Everybody always wanted grapes or cheese or anything that, we had to offer. So it was really nice.
And so the benefit of being raised in not only an athletic family, but in a soccer family. Snacks and drinks for all along the way. All right, I'm going to keep us moving so we can close up on time. I think we've already talked about these things, so I'm gonna skip this slide. It all came out naturally. I think the other thing that really comes like, oh, there's Maggie. This is at one of the Ogham Stones and Holy Wells.
You have to send her this picture. I haven't seen this.
Yeah. So I think we've already started speaking to that throughout our conversation here this evening, but just really the beauty of touching the culture in Ireland. And I cannot reiterate how excited the people in Ireland, especially in the west of Ireland, are to be collaborating and helping facilitate these experiences for pilgrims to walk through. Whether it's UNESCO World Heritage Geopark teams, if it's the trail maintenance teams, if it's the local convents, the Sisters of Mercy, if it's the storytellers and the musicians, just the families and the people that we get to connect with. again, we're moving at the pace humans have been moving at for hundreds of thousands of years. We get to relate to the landscape, unfold the knots in the mind, the heart, unfold the thoughts that have been stuck and tangential, and just let them go and move into a space of clarity. And it is truly through that authentic relating, both with the people and the places that we're passing by and meeting, as well as with the community, that we foster and nurture and come to know more along the way. On any Camino, whether this one here in Ireland or the ones in Spain, I've had some of the most richest, cathartic conversations with people that I will probably never see again. And in this case, I feel fortunate that I am going to get to see some of you all again and share the way again. Double excitement there. This was our whole crew of pilgrims last year. And in the middle is Sister Maureen, who is a firecracker powerhouse of a woman, who is just so full of mirth and laughter and joy and an excess of hugs for everyone. But she is just one of the many who help support us along the way in Ireland. So I want to take the last few minutes here to just very high level talk about options if you want to walk with us in September of 2025. So first option, I am still figuring out roughly how much it's going to be. That's why I'm giving a scale here. So we're going to start walking on September 12th, but need everybody to be in Drogheda, so just north of Dublin, on September 11th. So we walk from the 12th until the 30th. The 30th is when we ascend to the top of the Reek. And then we have a 3-day integration retreat out on Clare Island in Clew Bay, which is where this picture is taken from, on the left. Currently, we have almost all of those spaces are already spoken for. We have 3 available spaces. If you're thinking about doing that, I would highly invite you to reach out to me or contact or just go ahead and register from the Enchanted Journeys webpage. I think it's going to be about 3.2 to 3.5K for the whole thing. That includes the breakfast, all of our accommodations, and the 3-day retreat at the end. So really, really reasonable for the amount of time that we're going to be there. I know not everyone can make it for that full length, or you might want to just try the shorter length. So the option 2 is to walk 9 days with us. So from September 22nd to 30th. In that case, you'll be meeting us in Sligo, in the west of Ireland, and then we'll all be transported back to Rathcroghan to do those final 9 days of walking. Also, you'll be invited to participate in the 3-day retreat out at Clare Island. So we have 6 spaces open just to walk that last half. So technically we have 9 spaces open, 3 for the whole thing, 6 for just the latter half. Part of that is because we have more infrastructure agreements in place to support a larger group of people. And we cannot take more than 20 people in our group because that's all that the retreat house will hold at the end. There are opportunities, of course, to do this on your own. If you want to do it on your own, you can go for now until county councils in Ireland have taken over the mapping system. You can pull up the maps from online. In bright bold down there at the bottom of the page is the website for Enchanted Journeys, Irish Camino. At the bottom of the page, scroll all the way down, there's 2 places where you can download the map. There's one version that's for field maps. That'll be something that you can look at on your smartphone, or there's also a web map that you can look at on your computer or also on your smartphone. If you want to claim one of those 3 spaces for the whole walk, or for the 6 space, one of the 6 spaces for the final half of the walk, need to get a $500 deposit from you to hold that space and to get you registered online. Again, I will give everyone the final total amounts of that in April after I've returned back, so that I can just having walked it, I'll be able to give a more solid number. So with that said, the balance will be due in June because I'll have to have everything paid up for at that point in time. But again, you can always just go and download the maps and do it yourself. And there are people in Ireland who would be willing to help you, especially if you have a small group, to help set that up. Now the screen is frozen. Again, I spoke to this, so I'm going to return to the Irish concept of the Green Martyrs in early Irish science with the presentation in mid-April. So if anyone wants to return back for that. Otherwise, just going to close here with, again, reiterating that Thomas is working on this gorgeous documentary, and the documentary is due to come out in sometime in mid-February, I believe. Any corrections on that, Thomas?
Nope, yep, on track for mid to late February, yep.
Perfect. Well, so what I want to do is just go ahead and close this out. Man, almost got us right on track, usually right on point. We're a minute over. For those of you who need to go or feel complete, thank you for joining us this evening. Buon camino. Que admira falcha. Guramaget. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who are coming on the trip or are pretty sure you're coming on the trip, I'm gonna have you stick around if you like, and we can just talk a little bit more about some of the details and decision making. So once again, thank you everyone for coming, and we'll hope to see you again, and I'll hope to see you on the Tohar in Ireland.